Welcome to the Rocky Mountains. Lots of snow this winter. Lots of excitement down below inside the Marriott Center, where the surging BYU Cougars take on the Pacific Tigers at the top of the hour. Welcome to the WCC This Week, presented by Geico. We are live in Provo, Utah. Welcome inside the Marriott Center on the campus of Brigham Young University. Coming up in just a bit, the Pacific Tigers against the BYU Cougars. Dave McCann, Blaine Fowler, welcome inside. Back on Thursday, this place was sold out as BYU took down first place St. Mary's. Kind of changed things in that upper portion of the league. Place is sold out again this afternoon. A lot of momentum coming from the BYU side.
It'll be interesting to see if BYU can carry that momentum over from Thursday night. Sometimes teams will play in a big game with big implications and come back and lay an egg on the game following. And so Dave Rose hopes that his BYU basketball team does not do that against Pacific this afternoon.
Let's look at the matchup by the numbers and show you how they stack up. They met on January 2nd. BYU won 81-67. That game was close at halftime. The Cougars made 11 three-pointers, but here they sit with the season stats. What stands out?
Well, you see that BYU at 83 points a game, they lead the league in scoring. They want to push the basketball. Pacific is 8th in the league at scoring at 69.4. As you look at that, you realize that this is going to be a game all about pace. Pacific wants to make sure that BYU can't get out and run the basketball and play at high speed. BYU, they want to force turnovers. They want to get out and run. They want this game to be played at a very, very high pace.
Pacific just happy to be out playing basketball. It's been a very difficult year for the Tigers basketball program. The school kind of imposed some sanctions on themselves after an investigation into some academic misconduct. So here's what's going to happen at the top of the list, and you feel for seniors Alec Cobre and Eric Thompson. There's no postseason for the Tigers this year.
Yeah, and that's got to be frustrating. They lose 6 scholarships over 3 years, and they have limited recruiting efforts. Coach Berlin suspended for a year. And I'll tell you, this is some tough stuff, but I'll tell you what it tells me. Pacific is a good academic institution. They take it seriously.
Right.
And so because of that, they're going to not allow anything to go unnoticed. They're going to do their own investigation. This was self-imposed. I want to point that out right on the top, self-imposed. Working with the NCAA, and you have to have a lot of respect for an institution that says, you know what, academics matter. We're not going to let things slide, and we're going to penalize ourselves for this. And you got to give a lot of credit to this team, Dave. They have played remarkably well. When you think about what they have in the back of their minds with all this going on, with no postseason, they've competed. They're an athletic team, and it doesn't seem to have affected them on the floor.
It does affect the conference tournament. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. A little tweak there with one team that's not going to be in Las Vegas. And in talking with Mike Burns, you know, last year he was an assistant at San Diego, and now he is the interim head coach. With more on Coach Burns, the third member of our broadcast team this afternoon, Spencer Linton. Spencer?
You can imagine the load of pressure that Mike Burns felt when he found out on December 11th, hey, you're going to be the head coach of Pacific because of this ongoing NCAA investigation. But he has taken it in stride. Instead of tanking and this team being at the bottom of the West Coast Conference, they found a way to win 4 games and be right there in the middle of the pack. They just about upset 25th ranked St. Mary's last week, so they can absolutely play. They also were competitive with Gonzaga. This Tigers basketball team, while they won't be in the West Coast Conference tournament, and they do lose an average of 2 scholarships over the next 3 years, they're trying to set themselves up the best that they can so that they can be relevant again as they move forward. Dave?
All right, Spencer, what does drive him nuts are those 23 turnovers back on Thursday in San Diego, which cost them that game against the Toreros. News and notes from around the league. Hard to believe we've started February. There's just 4 Saturdays until the tournament, counting today. And already this week, Pepperdine, a shocker at home. They lose. St. Mary's losing on the road. Kyle Wilcher continues to sail along for Gonzaga. Wilcher and Collinsworth will be quite the battle for Player of the Year honors once we finish the month up. And on the women's side, Blaine, BYU has been the story with Lexi Eaton-Wright-Alch, the Player of the Week. And the Cougars in first place on the women's side, playing St. Mary's later today in Moraga. All right, today is a big day in the conference. We've got our game here in Provo, St. Mary's over to San Diego, Portland Loyola Marymount, Santa Clara and San Francisco with Blaine later tonight, the nightcap. All eyes will be on Gonzaga at Pepperdine. Pepperdine coming off that stunning defeat Thursday at home, but already they have wins over BYU and St. Mary's on their home floor. Here comes Gonzaga.
And Pepperdine is a team that, even though they lost, they're going to think that was an aberration. They're a very, very confident team at home. And if you're one of the three front runners for the league race right now, if you're Gonzaga or you're St. Mary's, you're BYU, well, you can't afford to lose. So we'll all be watching that one tonight.
See the Tigers get loose. They are sniffing an upset here in Provo. Coming up next, how BYU coach Dave Rose and his star player Kyle Collinsworth know each other. Oh yeah, it's coach versus player. Coming up. Back in Provo, WCC This Week continues. And we talk about the week that's gone by. Thursday night was a dramatic evening in the West Coast Conference. Dave McCann, Blaine Fowler. We saw BYU and St. Mary's here. And let's take a look at those scores from Thursday as to what happened in the league. The shocker was really what went on at Pepperdine with the Waves losing to Portland. But what stands out here?
Well, that's the one that really stands out, because Portland, who right now is 8th in the league in terms of the standings, it's a team that can really shoot threes, and it's a scary team, because if they get hot, I'm telling you, they can beat anybody when they start knocking them down. And I think that was the big surprise game Thursday night. Then St. Mary's bringing in the 25th ranked team in the country, a team that's unbelievably efficient and one of the smartest basketball teams I've seen in a long, long time, into Provo. The crowd, I think, had a big impact on that team in the second half, and BYU played really good defense in that one.
Let's look at some highlights from Thursday night. We had the chance to be here and watch this one. Three-point shooting. BYU was on, and the Gales were off. Jacob Hartsock got things going for the Cougars.
Well, and Randy Bennett told us before that game it would be so important, especially in transition, to find three-point shooters. They struggled with that in this ball game. BYU, a lot of good looks in transition for threes, coming off screens. See Nick Emery there for a three, and Kyle Collinsworth, well, he was just being Kyle Collinsworth the other night.
17 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. He seems to always be close to a triple-double, and he was knocking on the door again.
And Dave Rose told us that he needed to be really aggressive in this ball game for them to have a chance against St. Mary's, and aggressive is an understatement for the way he played. He was fantastic in this one. You see him, almost every highlight is him on attack in the paint going after the interior of that St. Mary's defense.
Let's look at the standings as we sit on this Saturday afternoon. Gonzaga at 10-2, then St. Mary's, and then BYU. But the Cougars may be in the best spot to take the regular season title.
So you think about what's left. The Zags still have to play BYU on the road, and they get St. Mary's at home. So they have to play 2 of the top 3. For St. Mary's, well, they've got the Zags on the road. That's a tough one, and that's a very, very tough place to play. For BYU, their only game remaining against the top 3 is a rematch with Gonzaga here in the Marriott Center. So if you're talking about home versus away, this thing could end up with 3 teams tied for first place in the league before it's all said and done with 3 losses apiece. In that scenario, think about it, if home teams hold court in this thing, then there would be a 3-way tie. BYU would have an advantage over Gonzaga because it would have a sweep.
All eyes on Las Vegas, not too far away in the Orleans Arena as the West Coast Conference Championships return to Southern Nevada. BYUtv will be there as well. Bridge shows, 11 ball games, wall-to-wall coverage throughout the week. And here is the revised format. Revised because Pacific, as mentioned, is ineligible. So instead of 2 games in the first round, there's just 1. And if you're a low seed trying to make a Cinderella story happen, boy, if you can get off the first day, more power to you.
Right now, this tournament and the sanctions, the self-imposed sanctions from Pacific is benefiting Portland because they're in that 8th spot. They would move up to 7 by virtue of Pacific not being there. And in previous years, there was a 7-10 game and an 8-9 game in that playing game. Well, guess what? Number 7 gets Friday off this year. 1 less game means 1 chance less to lose, I would think, if you're a lower seed.
That Baskin Robbins inside the Orleans Arena. Can't wait to have you back.
Oh, yeah. Every night.
If the tournament were to start right now, this is what we'd be looking at. LMU and San Diego in the first round, and BYU would be the 3rd seed as of the moment. St. Mary's the 2, and Gonzaga back at the number 1 seed, where it seems like they always are, and then Pepperdine and San Francisco.
Well, and Gonzaga is a team that they've been there before. They understand what tournament play is all about. And mental toughness is part of winning at tournament time, and they expect to win when they go into that tournament. Puts them in a great position.
They can very easily slip to the 3 seed over the next couple of weeks. And that's why their game tonight at Pepperdine is so big. Well, the winner goes to the big dance. Does the winner of the regular season of these 3 we've been talking about, is that enough to get in at large? We
don't have historical evidence because the winner of the regular season's always been Gonzaga.
Yeah.
Then they go and they win the tournament most times, and so it's hard to know. I would think that the NCAA tournament committee would have to respect the regular season champion even if they don't win this championship for a tournament bid.
All right, let's get over to Spencer and check out the relationship. We know Kyle Collinsworth and Dave Rose have a player-coach relationship on the floor and on the sideline, but how far does it go? Spencer, you have the answer?
Well, we're hoping to find out after this player versus coach segment. Bob Eubanks, you remember the old game show host of the Newlywed Game? Imagine if he were hosting Kyle Collinsworth and Dave Rose to try and see how much they know about each other. Take a look at this.
First question, what is Kyle's favorite TV show?
I'm going to say The Good Wife.
All right, reveal it to the camera.
The Office, a classic.
Second question, what is the drill that Kyle despises most at practice? All right, Coach, your answer?
Circle the wagons.
Circle the wagons. Reveal it.
Defensive closeout.
Defensive closeout. Last,
All right, we're close.
Circle the wagons. This will be an interesting one, Chris. Coach, tell me the largest number of points Kyle's ever scored in a basketball game.
Kyle loves his teammates to score so much, but I watched him play a game in high school where I think he got 36.
36. The answer? And when was it?
46, 7th grade.
7th grade.
But he was right about the high school.
You know what? I think we give it to him because 36 he got high school, 46 7th grade.
I would give you that, Coach.
I'll give you that, Coach. All right.
Okay,
Coach,
change
that
over.
marker.
Just let him get the marker and the eraser.
Coach's favorite non-basketball activity.
I would guess skiing.
Hold on. Did you write it down, Coach?
No, I haven't wrote it down yet.
Okay, hold on. But we're going to stick with your answer. Coach's high integrity.
Skiing. Yeah. What's your coach's most common catchphrase or saying? What does he say to you guys all the time where you wake up in the middle of the night going, man, he's just going to keep saying that to me?
I don't know exactly how he says it, but effort is what he always preaches.
Something about effort.
I don't.
Yeah.
Compete.
Right, that's a ding ding. That's a winner.
Is that a ding? Is that a winner, Coach?
When you have effort, you compete.
Yeah, that's exactly
that's knowing your
Oh,
coach.
we're going to go this one, Coach. Who is Coach's favorite player of all time?
Probably someone from my freshman year. Say Jackson Emery.
Ooh, Jackson Emery.
Coach?
Jimmer and Jack.
Jimmer and Jax. All right, good work right there. BYU Hoops. Nice job, guys.
Player versus coach, and there's Kyle Collinsworth The captains meeting at center court as we get ready for the Cougars and the Tigers. Up next, why Pacific's TJ Wallace becoming the hometown hero he never planned to be for the Tigers. TJ Wallace making a big impact for the Pacific Tigers, but being the big man on campus at the school in his hometown was not the game plan. Sarah Cazell has his story.
TJ Wallace is a star here at the Spanos Center, and not just for what he does on the court. He also connects with the crowd as a Stockton native, but it was never his plan to be the hometown hero.
I played on the #1 team in the nation for travel ball, the Oakland Soldiers, so I had a pretty big list. A lot of Pac-12 schools, UCLA, Arizona, Oregon, and USC offered me late my senior year after I had already committed to Pacific, but originally I wasn't even planning on coming to Pacific.
The McNair High School star grew up miles from the university, but had never stepped foot on campus till he took his visit with the program. Then he thought twice.
It wasn't until my junior year, I believe, where I actually stopped and I had to think, like, I have a really nice school that's in my backyard, so to speak, and they're really good. They have a good basketball tradition, and they're a prestigious academic school. So I was like, let me actually take a look here.
Between the Ivy League feel and the basketball personnel, Wallace was sold. The Stockton kid would become a Tiger. He clocked significant minutes as a freshman, helping his team to a postseason appearance.
Wallace takes it in.
Last season, he scored in the double digits 19 times. And this year, the junior is Pacific's second leading scorer and logs the most minutes per game, making him the prominent player in front of his hometown crowd.
One of the things we talk about that we take pride in is being Valley tough. We're from the Central Valley, and I don't think we could use that phrase if TJ wasn't our leader. That means not only a toughness exerted, through effort on the basketball floor, through mental discipline, but also through effort away from the floor and acting the right way and doing things the right way. And so I know the community couldn't be prouder. It really is a neat story that young man is, the hood ornament on the car that is Pacific basketball.
Around 20 friends and family members come to Spanos regularly to watch Wallace play. Among them is Wesley Shepard, a childhood friend and someone Wallace considers a brother.
It is something special. Again, when I say a hometown hero, I really mean it. People see TJ as, they see him and they want to do better. And he's something that you can reach, and he's something that you can grab. You know what I mean? So we're in the stands, and I'm in my front row, the same area I'm in, every time. And hearing the crowd, TJ, and when he's called up and the crowd is, going crazy, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I know it, but it's great that everyone can recognize that about somebody that you care about. It's an amazing thing.
The junior still has the rest of this season and his senior year to cement his legacy as a Tiger, and Coach Mike Burns knows what he'd like it to be.
if I could make a wish for his legacy, I would love to see him have the opportunity to take this team from some tough times into the postseason next year and have some great times, because he really deserves that, and I think his teammates deserve it, and I think the community deserves it as well.
I want to win double-digit games in the WCC because how strong this conference is top to bottom. Next year is something I'm definitely looking forward to, being able to compete for a WCC championship. And if I get that, then we get an NCAA bid and I'll feel good about myself. But until then, I'll keep working.
Strong to the basket, throws it up and in.
For the WCC This Week, I'm Sarah Cazell.
Sarah, thank you. Up next, TJ and the Tigers, the BYU Cougars will preview the game of the week. Welcome back to Provo. Dave McCann, Blaine Fowler. It's the WCC This Week, presented by Geico. The Pacific Tigers and the BYU Cougars are game of the week. BYU at 17-7, the Tigers at 6-15. Dave Rose calls this a defining moment for his basketball team. How come?
It's a big, big game, and teams coming off even bigger games like BYU had Thursday night against St. Mary's, a game that put them in contention for the league race. Sometimes you tend to have a letdown, so he wants to see how this team is going to play against Pacific. On paper, it's a team that BYU should be able to match up great with and win, but sometimes those letdowns determine whether or not you have great success in a season or don't. That's what he's talking about.
Let's look at the keys of the game. We'll start with the Tigers, who are in town looking for the upset. Last Saturday, they had St. Mary's on the ropes with the lead late, couldn't hold it, and the Gales came back and won. Here we are, another big challenge for them on a consecutive Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, the Tigers really need to play great transition defense. BYU runs and pushes the ball particularly well in the Marriott Center when they're at home, and they've got to limit turnovers, especially those turnovers where you turn it over and BYU gets a run out on the other end, easy buckets. And for BYU, they need to play inside out. They're a good three-point shooting team. They shot it well at Pacific from behind that arc, but it's when they attack the inside, kick the ball to the outside, that they're most effective making threes, and they want to push the pace in this ball game. When they get teams on the ropes, they get the crowd in here, and they're running up and down the floor. It really gets teams on their heels, and they lose confidence, and then BYU runs away with it. So push the pace, play at high speed in this one.
Back on Thursday, it was the crowd that had a huge impact in the second half as St. Mary's shot 23% from the field. Well, the sixth man is big here at the Marriott Center. Spencer with more on that.
Without question, Dave, BYU has won 17 straight games in this building, 11-0 this season, including that big win over St. Mary's on Thursday night, due in large part to the Rowdy Rock, the Roar of Cougars student section. They are generally 6,000 to 7,000 strong at times for home games. BYU banks on them to bring emotion and passion. They are loud and proud. Dave Rose even joked earlier this week saying, can we figure out a way to get all 18 games at home so that we can work this West Coast Conference thing out? So the Rock doing their part. Dave?
Well, St. Mary's had all those home games, and I think it hurt them as they finally went on the road and really struggled Thursday night. The impact players, Collinsworth was big against the Gales. Figure he'll be big again today, and TJ Wallace for the Tigers.
And it's important for both of these impact players to play an attack. The ball is in their hands. TJ Wallace, a great ball handler, and he's a veteran that can come on the road and give leadership. He started 27 games last year, honorable mention, all-conference last year. He's got to get it done. He's got to be the leader. And Collinsworth, well, he's the undisputed leader of this BYU basketball team. 10 career triple-doubles. Are you kidding me? Past the likes of Shaquille O'Neal. And Kid, I mean, he has been fantastic as a triple-double machine.
Well, look at this journey that he's been on. That's rewritten college basketball history. Starting with Hawaii in 2014, into league play, that big one up in Spokane against Gonzaga. And then he started getting on a roll.
And when he is playing triple-double type basketball, he's on attack, he's going into the interior of the opposition's defense. BYU offensively is really hard to stop, and he's so good. One of the top rebounding guards in the country, without question. Great handles on the basketball at 6'6", so he's a matchup problem, and so aggressive with what he does. And then he can score because he gets to the rim. And so you combine those things, the great ability to rebound, the ability to distribute and to see over the top of defenses, and then the ability to score when you don't stop them. That's what makes Kyle Collinsworth a great basketball player.
Let's go inside the play and have you explain just how effective he is down low.
Well, we talk about him with assists, but we forget how smart he is offensively. He recognizes where the defense is, pins the player behind him, spins to the inside. He's fed from the high post. A perfect read of the defense by Collinsworth. He does everything well, and part of it is whether the ball's in his hands or he's working without the basketball. He's got such a great knowledge of the game and has a great feel for how to take advantage of another team's defense.
Big number to keep in mind today as he drives in and does his thing, then he kicks it out. BYU made 11 three-pointers in Stockton, and that was the big difference in the victory over the Tigers earlier.
Yeah, when he's on attack, BYU's getting to the free throw line. They're kicking the ball outside, and they're getting threes, and they did both of those things well. There was a huge advantage in trips to the free throw line and in three-pointers made in that ball game. And Pacific can't afford to let him do that and get in and penetrate and kick the basketball. Find shooters and stop Collinsworth. That's easily said, not so easily done.
So that's the WCC this week. Now it's the WCC right now. Our game of the week, the BYU Cougars and the Pacific Tigers, coming up next from the Marriott Center here in Provo, Utah.